So welcome to the second week of the course. A couple cleanup items. Some people are still scrambling to try and get books or wondering about which version and all that. And again, if you can use one of the older versions, that'll work just fine. Whatever you're most comfortable with in terms of the cheapest option. The test questions, there may be a few differences, or not test questions, but book questions, but we'll be able to work around it. In fact, the whole scam with the textbook thing is they really don't change much. But there's an expectation for professors to publish, so they set out a new edition and claim publishing credit and make some money. I'm not a big fan of that whole system. But anyway, the other thing is too that people were starting to take a look at the comments and stuff. I guess it was pretty clear. At least that's what I'm assuming, based upon not too many questions. So you were presented with three items there, just the same as you'll have this week. Actually four, because I had those other charts in there. But the three items were the actual PowerPoint, then this video that's on YouTube, and then third will be just a little video for comment. The video for comment, don't waste too many brain bites typing in, paragraphs or pages. It's just more of an attendance measuring thing, and also give me some feedback on the videos. These videos I put out, it's like the guy last week with his hands waving around. Very interesting, very dedicated, but he's trying to sell a book. And then there's a woman this week who's kind of off the deep end again, very much trying to sell something, but it's free, so they have to add some value to it. And that whole concept of free will be something we'll be dealing with this week, because I know most of you are much, it's much quicker, much more efficient to have an app on your phone if you're going to try and do budgeting. And there's some options out there, but keep in mind that if something's free and you're getting value from it, guess what? You're the product. They'd love to know who's interested in finance and who's just starting out. I mean, that's where marketing efforts begin, is with people. One, they're going to be in college, so they have decent income, but two, they probably don't have brand alliances. So people my age, marketers could care less. Although, golly, I guess the drug companies, that's their main focus now. But anyway, for brand preference, whether it be beer or whatever, if you wonder why all that stuff's oriented towards people who are around about college age, who probably don't have that much money to spend, it's because that's the most lucrative. Because if you get somebody my age and they're a Coors or a Budweiser drinker, they're not switching from one to the other. They're set. Advertisers would be wasting money trying to manipulate you. But the same is true of the financial companies. Granted that the amounts of money are higher, but you're probably set in your ways. If they can get you early on while you're still malleable, they're all about that. All right. So sometimes, in your life, or just for your own personal use, you might want to get a cash flow statement. Obviously, it's personal cash flow statement as opposed to a business one, but sometimes it's kind of the same. Anyway, inflows, just like they look, salaries, interest, dividends, other stuff, side hustle kind of stuff. I guess that'd be included in salaries. Outflows, all the expenses, both large and small. So it does, make sense. So you can kind of track where your money's going. So recording the expenses. You'll hear me talk great things about credit cards and also, bad things about credit cards. Personally, I use a credit card for everything. Very few items do I pay cash for, because I want a record, and I've got some business things, and so all of my expenses are tracked through that. Now that there's 87,000 new IRS agents coming online in the next whatever number of years, man, I expect there's going to be a lot more people audited. So anyway, but that is one way, rather than having to save paper or scan it and do all that other stuff. But that's how I keep track of my revenues, obviously the bank, and then expenses, primarily through the credit card, maybe some stuff on the bank, ACH debits and stuff like that. Okay, net cash flows. So, you know, are you solvent? Are you going to be able to continue? You know, inflow better be more than outflow, in the long term anyway, or else you're going to be in tough times. They just go through a sample budget here. Now again, you know, you all have your own expenses, and you could do the categories however you want them, but it's just kind of, you know, kind of interesting the way they come up with the expenses. And your expenses may be nothing compared to theirs. $600 for recreation, and she's spending, you know, $60 on a fun. I don't know. It's hard to define some of these, but it can be your own. And like I say, there's lots of online things to help you with that. Okay, so factors affecting cash flow. Yep. You know, there's kind of a peak where it ramps up, and then as you get older, you want to work less. Or maybe, you know, a lot of people don't retire. So that's just a different thing too. I mean, I never intend to fully retire, but I'll, you know, whatever. I'm not going to be doing anything I don't want to do from here on out. Anyway, type of job based on skill level. So you know all this stuff and number of income. So the best thing you can do, and I realize it's kind of outside of personal finance, but if you could stay married, oh my gosh, that is, divorce is just expensive. Sometimes it's worth it, but anyway, that's just me. Factors that affect cash flow. So size of the family, age, and your behavior. Some people just spend money they feel better about themselves. I mean, it's like recreation. They go to the store and shop and buy a bunch of mindless stuff. Anyway, I'm not one of those, but there certainly are a lot of the others. So anyway, if you are that type of person, try and live within your means, or, you know, find a different tension relieving behavior. So yeah, this is what they're showing. Now this is, you know, so oversimplified. You know, I realize some people in college are working full time. Maybe there'll be a bump up when you get your degree. But anyway, in that career path, you know, it all depends. Sometimes people enjoy stuff and you know, want to keep seeking higher, and other people are just, there's a whole concept in China right now. It's people laying flat and let it rot, where people are just like, yeah, I don't want to compete in that hyper, you know, 6 day a week, 9 to 9 kind of, you know, schedule, and they're just kind of checking out, which is not a bad thing. I mean, it's your life, and but again, you're gonna have to be more competent with your personal finance skills if you're not going after the big bucks. Although having the big bucks is expensive. There's, you know, regardless of the amount of money you're making, some people just, anyway, they have a lot more expenses, a lot more needs than probably they realistically need. And then in retirement, they're showing a big drop off. So fair enough. Not that typical. So a budget, cash flow statement based upon forecasting cash flow. So that's kind of what we were looking at before. I mean, they were doing the statement to figure out, you know, basically how much disposable income you have. And the more you can have, you know, specificity, like having recreation at $600, I don't know, that just seems kind of odd to me, that I could see, you know, putting away money for travel and you just put it into a fund and you budget for it. That'd be cool. But, you know, and $600 in terms of gym memberships, and I don't know whether going to bars fits into that, but I think they could be more specific so they could track down what they need to spend on. So here she is again. Rent, internet, electricity, cellular. So standard stuff. Again, clothing. For me, it definitely comes in spurts. I'm not exactly the most snappy dresser, so I mean, $100 is anyway. I've got a daughter that works at Lululemon, and she gets everything 75% off. So not too much of their stuff will I wear, but there are ways around that. Okay, so what happened here? She had health care and insurance expense. So yeah, if you budget for that over the course, that's usually a pretty good way to go. In Germany, they only build the utilities like maybe twice. No, it's usually even once a year. But you paid in. It wasn't an optional thing. You paid in based upon your average usage from the previous year, and so you're hit with a multi-thousand-dollar expense, but because you've paid into the essentially an escrow account over the time, it's all good. So be glad we don't live over there now. Energy expenses are going incredibly high in Europe. Um, so anyway, deviation into the negative. Well, that's going to happen now and then. But if you have an emergency fund set up for it, or it's a known expense, but it's just not on a regular basis, you can plan for that as well. Anticipating cash shortages, morning shortage, and anyway, adjustments gonna be necessary, always. Yeah, medical care and car, home, those things are tough to figure out, and then you can look at it over the long term. So, a real super short term budget that tries to save balance is maybe not as useful as a longer term one that kind of um, smooths out some of the um, unusual expenses. But having a emergency fund and also having a credit card with uh, all the balance available is kind of useful. You don't want to keep a whole bunch of money in your checking account. If you got like 10 grand floating around your checking account, man, you'll figure out what identity theft is pretty quick. I get hit so many times. I've never lost money, but man, they come after my stuff continually. So anyway, you're better off to keep that main source of your wealth in an investment account that keeps it separate and with tighter security controls because you don't need the ease of access. And so let's say something bad happens to the car or whatever, you put those expenses on the credit card, and now you got that grace period to use that credit card and get that balance, get it out of those accounts and use it. So before we go, I want to do something. I want to show you a couple things. These are some of the budgeting plans. So Mint might be an option for you. Again, I'm not endorsing these. In fact, I advise you to kind of use some caution because if you're putting a whole bunch of information on here, that can be, it's not going to go away. They're gathering this up and they'll sell it to somebody else. But if you've kind of addressed those concerns and you're looking for something that will, do budgeting, and you don't mind your personal data being shared a bit, then maybe that's an option. The Credit Karma is also part of their things, although their site won't load. But the thing about Mint is that it's with part of the bigger Intuit thing. Intuit is the company that controls TurboTax and a bunch of other things. So that integration might be helpful for you. Let me try this. Nope. Trying to see if I can get into it. But anyway, the one company makes it all. So if you're going to do your own taxes, something like TurboTax or whatever is quite useful. But yeah, these are definitely, for-profit kind of companies. And, that's what all these different things are all included together, and they're all, They even own their own email marketing company. TurboTax might be, you know, kind of the least offensive of the things because you pay for that and it's not doesn't have the same privacy concerns as some of the others, but that's kind of up to you. But again, there's plenty of other apps. If you know something, or hear good things about every one of these, that's good. And keep in mind, things change over time. You know that once you identify something great, all of a sudden the company changed. Instagram used to be much better in my mind before Facebook bought it, and things like that. So just because I think Mint was independent till it got bought out by Intuit. So yeah, I make no endorsements for that, but it is one way of making a budget and getting it done. Here she is. She's reviewing the data. Again, you can also do kind of a backwards budget if you're doing something where you track your expenses, say with, the credit card method, because you got to review those expenses anyway to make sure you weren't overcharged or there's some bogus charges on there. And when you're doing that, you can look at the different areas. They try to categorize stuff. They don't do such a good job, but anyway, it's an option. Improving the budget. So look for areas. Yeah, you need to learn how to stay within whatever live within your means. Borrowing money from friends will quickly, you'll end up with no friends. But I've got friends. Oh my gosh, they get a $500 or something, and they go from being absolutely broke to having a little bit of extra money for something, and maybe a day it's in their hands. They just can't handle it, and so they might have more use for a budget that would keep them maybe a little more disciplined. So she just expands it out over a year. In Mint, we just went there so you can see that Mint, I don't even know if this still works, because now it's going to be, Intuit. So it's a redirect, but Mint Intuit, not just mint.com. So they have changed. Personal balance sheet, yep, your liabilities and your net worth, which you calculate from the other two. And a balance sheet gives you your financial position. So the need for a balance sheet might be, say you're getting ready to buy a house and you're going to, the process in buying a house, we'll talk about real estate later on, but the first thing you want to do when you're thinking about buying a house is go to the mortgage company and see what you qualify for. And they'll, generally issue a pre-approval letter that's up to a certain level. So, I did real estate for a little while, and if somebody showed up and they don't know what they can afford, I wasn't that powerful real estate agent, but a good real estate agent wouldn't even talk to the person because they just show a definite lack of seriousness by not knowing what they can afford. You go through all this legwork to line them up with a house, and then all of a sudden they realize there's no way they can afford it, or perhaps they can afford something quite better, and now they're not interested in the houses you've been showing them. So, for the good real estate agents, they don't mess around with people. Real estate agents, there's about 5% of them sell about 95% of the property, and all those other agents are just kind of, wandering and making maybe some money, but they're not making into, double six figures like the good ones are. So assets. Keep in mind, you can say, you've got some asset that's worth a lot, but you need a buyer. So, that's where stocks and property, there's generally a buyer out there. There's a, valuation mechanism for it. But if you say, oh, I've got all these great handmade rugs, I mean, they're great. And, I was exposed to this a lot in the Middle East in the military. But, they may be worth a couple grand to you, per rug. But who are you going to sell them to? What's the market? I've got a good friend, Turkish guy. He's since passed away, but I was taking a quick trip back to the States, and he loaned me like 3 rugs because we knew the prices were so much higher in the States. And so I went to a rug dealer, and yeah, he was selling for huge amounts of money. But when I said, okay, I can get you these 3, Tabriz or whatever version they were, um, silk rugs though, nice ones. And he said, no, I pay about $400 for them. So, he's got the selection, he's got the inventory, he's got so many expenses. And for me to try and sell one of those rugs at that same price, it's just not going to work. If you go on eBay or something to try and sell something like that, marketplace, there's just people are generally looking for bargains. They're not wanting to pay full retail. So be careful valuing your assets is what I'm trying to say. Make sure that there's the worth is based upon what a buyer is willing to pay. Stocks and bonds, we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, those are certainly, you can measure those assets quite accurately. They're quoted, basically instantaneously when the markets are open. So crypto could fall into this as well, although crypto's a little bit more volatile. Mutual funds are generally stocks that are just put together to give you some diversification. So rather than own, whatever Apple directly, you may be in some sort of high tech thing that owns, maybe some Apple, some Dell, some, a couple hard drive makers, or memory makers. Anyway, the understanding is that not all those companies are going to have a bad time at the same time, although they were all doing pretty poorly in the past couple of years. But anyway, if one company goes out of business, somebody in that sector is going to pick up the slack. And if you have a mutual fund that's like that, it's going to not be too damaged. But mutual funds can be combined of anything. What I was just describing was a sector fund, which is a mutual fund. They can be completely broad. You can have defense and energy and consumer goods and all that, different companies, just to give you some diversification. So there's more individual mutual funds than there are individual stocks. So, and real estate is probably the best because of the tax advantages, and you can also enjoy it. Having mutual funds is whatever. You can look at the statement, but in a real estate you can actually live it and enjoy it. So liabilities. So in personal finance, anytime we say short-term, long-term, here they're saying current liabilities, but they could also say short-term liabilities. Anyway, 1 year is the defining thing. So it makes a huge difference when you sell things because it gets different tax treatments depending on whether you've had it a year or had it more than a year. And net worth again. So kind of beat this horse pretty well. Personal balance sheet. It's kind of interesting. It's fun to look at when times are good. Depressing when bad things are happening. Here's what she's got. Do you think you'll be able to sell your furniture for $1,000? I don't know. Stuff seems to go pretty cheap. Cars depreciate, although $1,000, that's probably not much of a car. But stocks and other investments, or cash, obviously more cash here in the checking account, those are what they are. And bills. For me, I really don't deal too much with a credit card because you should not carry a balance at the end of the month. If you do, you're paying interest. So you want to be what they call a convenience user. Somebody pays it off in the grace period and never has to pay any interest. Yep. So if you want an idea of how you're doing and you're considering a big purchase, Or if you're going into the mortgage company, the way that's going to work is they're generally going to have their own forms. And there are online companies that do it now, but you're probably in most cases still better off going to the local company. And the local company, obviously they don't have the assets to finance that many homes. They generally sell it off to whatever Freedom or one of these big mortgage companies. So you buy a house and about 3 weeks, a month later, you get a letter saying, oh, your loan has been sold. They don't ask you. They have that right. You signed up for it in the paperwork. Fair enough. But it is good that when the transaction's taking place that you have a local lender who understands things and's got skin in the game and isn't just online, is that could be kind of problematic in getting the house closed. So she's thinking about buying a car. 20 grand. If she purchased, well, if she put it all on credit, that seems like a liability. So we'll look and see how they define this. Car loan. So that's a liability, right? So the net worth is, liabilities minus assets. That car, if you bought a brand new car for 20 grand, the minute you drive it off the lot, maybe 16,000 or something is what it's worth, and then it's going to drop, more. So she's probably going to be underwater because she's got a car loan for 16 grand, and that's just the nature of depreciation on cars. Well, we all know this pretty well now. Although there are lots of job opportunities, just nobody wants to do them. And lost jobs. We'll see what happens. This whole situation we're in now with inflation and everything else is so uncharted that who knows where it's going to end up. Yeah, you got to deal the hand you're dealt. We don't have too much control. But yeah, I mean, this is accurate in terms of interest rates have climbed for mortgages lately, and that means that fewer people can afford, certain size homes or any home even, and that results in fewer buyers, and it results in the supply and demand being shifted back to the buyers now, where there's more homes being offered than there are available. Anyway, that's theoretically how it's supposed to work, but that's why when interest rates go up, home prices tend to level or drop. Wealth is built using cash flows. So again, it's about getting money. I mean, this gets back to those charts. It's really tough to work hard enough to make a bunch of money. You need to get your money working, harder than you do, and that's why. But you need the engine to get this thing started. You need money to start it, but then you need to rely on the benefits of compound interest to build that wealth to the point where your monthly contributions to your investments are more and more insignificant as the wealth generating power of the asset itself is, the impressive part. So anyway, yeah, net worth. I mean, if I don't, but if I had a negative net worth, but I had a ton of real estate, well, I wouldn't feel bad about that. If I had a negative net worth and I've got a bunch of credit card debt and a bunch of other assets or vehicles and stuff that's all depreciating, yeah, that'd be cause for concern. There you go. Monitoring debt, liquidity ratios. Yep. So we've talked about liquidity before. That's, liquid assets, things that can be converted into cash. That is, liquidity is the ability to convert items into cash. Yeah, so again, they may ask you for this number, but more likely they'll get your data and they'll calculate it themselves and see if you've got too much debt to see what you qualify for and what you can be approved for. And savings rates. What percentage of your disposable income are you saving? Okay. So this applying time concepts of money, this is a very this is kind of water under the bridge by the time you've looked at those charts and you understand the concept of compound interest. So they kind of take like this old school approach where, believe me, there used to be like formulas and little charts and stuff. Now everything's pretty much automated. You punch in the numbers into little boxes on the spreadsheet, and it calculates these things for you. But they'll go through some of the interesting things. So value is influenced by the time it's received. So the earlier you can get it, the better. So, there are statements on here, they put them in larger type to try and drive this home, but nothing drives it home other than looking at those charts and realizing how much, delaying or increasing or any of those other things affects the asset growth. They're going to do these time value of money calculations, and they're kind of interesting, but it's a concept you kind of know is out there. Like, let's say you want to put 20% down on a house, so you need, I don't know, let's say 40 grand in cash, you think. So if you need 40 grand in cash, you can, start putting money aside. And how many months is that going to take you with compound interest? Yeah, there's some math involved there. Or you just look at one of the formulas or look at one of the calculators for the time value of money, and you're good. It'll spit out the numbers because it's the compound interest equations can, it'd just be onerous since the increments are split up basically to every day. An annuity is something we haven't talked about. Annuity, well, they're saying a series of equal cash flow payments that can be reserved. Anyway, it's a certain amount of money that's paid to you and on a regular basis. And there are some pseudo insurance products, or at least they're sold by insurance companies. And let's say you give them 10 grand and they start giving you, $100 a month from now till whenever, as long as you live. I mean, there are products out there like that. They'd probably pay you more than $100 on 10 grand. But anyway, it's often they're complex products, and so they're sold by a salesman, which is not always the best because then there's a commission involved. But it is fairly positive in terms of, if it's that type of annuity where you're paid these series of payments until you die. Well, as opposed to insurance, the only way you collect is by dying. So insurance can be, or annuity can be more optimistic. If you think you're going to live a long time, that might be the way to go. Compounding, interest on interest. So we hit that. Future value of an amount, so the amount you deposit today, interest rate, and the number of years the money will be invested. And that's going to give you a total. Or you can work back. So this is future value, though. You can have future value of money today, and this is just the single amount. Yeah, single dollar amount. And they put in a bunch of other stuff in here. Don't get too wrapped up about it. We're not going to be grading you on acronyms. It's much more important that you understand the concept of compound interest and how it can work for you and against you. So you will not have formulas on the exam. So, you know, PV, present value. It's not tough concepts, but it's just the emphasis is on the wrong area in my mind. Yeah. Slight rounding errors because these formulas are not as exact. And so now they're trying to show you what you can get a better understanding of, I believe, from the charts. So again, yep. Nice little graph. How much are they getting? Oh, they're getting 10%. Nice. So there's also a thing called the rule of 72, which is not exact, but it's good enough. Anyway, if you get an interest rate, say somebody's paying you 7.2% interest, how long will it take your money to double? 10 years. Because you divide whatever number, and I conveniently chose 7.2%. If you divide that into 72, you know, that goes in there 10 times. So 10 years, the money would double. If you're getting 20% interest, then you divide that into 72. It's, you know, less than 4 years. So anyway, look at that. It's kind of a number that we won't test on it or anything else. But if you're ever trying to figure out just a trivia stuff about how long it'll take my money to double at a given interest rate, just divide that number into 72. And that's why when you look at what banks offer in terms of interest on your savings account, I mean, not only will that not keep up with inflation, and it's you're not going to be doubling anything. You're going to be losing money in the long run. Yep. So they understand it. They just don't illustrate it as well as I think they should. Well, yeah, I beg to differ with these guys. There's, I've got a mortgage loan or two that's, below 3% interest. If they think I'm going to pay that off early when interest rates are so much higher and I can make more doing other things, then yeah. So you have to be strategic about it. But in fact, that interest on mortgage loans, the reason I was saying real estate is good is because that is tax deductible, whereas credit cards, consumer loans, not tax deductible. So not all debt is the same. There's some that's very bad and some that's useful. Discounting. So again, they're just introducing a new term, but let's say you need so much money in the future. How much do you need now to get that? So so just another formula. But if you really want to see details on this, you could just type into Google, present value of a dollar or whatever, and there'll be a number of sites that will come up with a, basically a calculator for you for these types of decisions. Back in real estate, people always used to have these charts on the back of their cards, but it's just too involved. So it's far easier just to do it with an app. Present value, number of years it'll be invested. Present value table. Yeah, financial calculator. Financial calculators I don't even think those are a thing as much anymore because, most consumer electronics are not unitaskers. Like there used to be financial calculators that, you literally carry a calculator around and it can only really do one thing. So This guy needs 50 grand in 5 years. Dollar amount. So, but here he's just doing a single investment. Yep. Future value of annuity, series of equal cash flow payments. They just aren't that common. I never had an annuity. Future value of annuity. So again, series of payments as opposed to just a lump sum like some of the others. You'll see this quite often in these lottery winners where they'll, you can have $1 million today or $5 million over the course of 5 years. Those people are smart. I mean, the lottery people, they've done the math and they know, that the values are pretty close to being the same. So. Yep. And here's the monthly payments to reach. Well, actually, they're coming backwards since it's the present value. But yeah, I'd love to have these kind of problems. Get another rainy day on our hands and the dogs happen to be inside. Sorry. Anyway, it's interesting that you can get numbers that are fairly close to these. Don't worry too much about it. It's completely legitimate to get whatever problem you're given and blow off their charts and just type it in an app in Google. Now, a lot of times the apps are better because they'll have more things in, like when you're trying to buy a house. They'll, if you do one of these formulas, you're just looking at the purchase price of the house, the amount you're going to have to take out for a loan. But there's a lot more involved in a house, and a couple that are, requirements are the insurance and that you'll have to pay. So some of those other fees are not noted in there. There's another escrow item. I'm drawing a blank right now. But anyway, those ones that are set up for mortgages are a bit more complete in terms of all the aspects that really go into the expense of owning a home. So yeah, rather than just throw money in an account and hope that you have enough at the end, there's ways to calculate this out. Setting goals, so in the budgeting aspects that's useful, but again, I think you're better off with the tailor-made apps online. See the reward of your effort. Well, yeah, this is what you do with your budget, and you have to see how much disposable income you have, and then you have to manage your investments so that you maximize that compound interest. So, and then the homework. So the cash flow problem, and then 2, 6, and 10. So again, it's not cheating if you get their numbers and plug them into an online calculator. I don't have a problem with that because nobody's going to be using those charts. All right, that'll do it for now. I'll post the homework, and yep, the actual homework that you're going to turn in, as I said, that'll be done before the test. So here in a few weeks, I'll start putting all the assignments together, and that way you can also budget your time, since there's not too many things in this course that have a time crunch associated with them. I'd rather see the work get done in a better quality project than a weekly scramble to try and get things turned in. Keep up on the video comments because I think that's useful, but that's about it.